All right, thanks, Mike. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us here. And a warm welcome to this year's investor event. Let me crack on. The theme of this year's event is Connected for Growth, Delivering Value. I think it's fair to say that in the last decade, or of the last decade, the last 2 years have seen more change than any of the preceding 8 years. That's not a surprise to us. It's probably not a surprise to anyone really here in the room. I think we've all been anticipating this period where you get an acceleration of change within our sector, within our industry. We are going to share with you over the next 24 hours quite a lot that will get you thinking, I think. Quite a lot that will get you understanding what Unilever is doing to embrace that. Quite a lot of what we're doing to seize on what we believe are huge opportunities that the changes and the fast pace of change with consumers, with technology, with channels, etc., that they bring. We think that if you prepare for that and you adapt early to that, there is tremendous opportunity. We are in the third year of a journey, really. You see here my first investor event actually in Manila and Singapore. That's where we first started talking to you about zero-based budgeting and what we called then new functional models. And really the new functional models were a precursor to what you will understand now as Connected for Growth. Actually, it was 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, that we first conceived of Connected for Growth and started to express it that way. And then last year even in Port Sunlight, we talked more explicitly for it for the first time. Connected for Growth really is, without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest change program that we've had in Unilever for the last decade or so. And today and tomorrow, we're going to focus very much so on how Connected for Growth is, first of all, already delivering value for Unilever, and secondly, how it fundamentally underpins our growth model going forwards in this much faster changing world. But while the pace of change in our sector is definitely accelerating, and whilst arguably the barriers to entry in the sector are coming down, we have a very clear and a consistent vision. And in fact, we think we have 4 defining strengths that are built up really over the many, many decades that Unilever has been doing what it does. But we do continue to sharpen these defining strengths ready for tomorrow's world. I just wanted to quickly run through with you what the 4 things are. First of all, we have a very, very strong portfolio of purpose-led global brands and some very iconic local jewels. In fact, and I always think this is the most relevant thing for consumer companies, 85% of our portfolio sits in number 1 or number 2 positions in the categories or countries in which we operate. So an extremely strong portfolio of brands. Secondly, we of course have what I think is absolutely unmatched, unparalleled global reach. We're in 190 countries, as you know, and we are almost 60%, 57% now in the emerging markets. The third strength that we have is the depth and the breadth of our distribution. We reach 2.5 billion consumers every single day. Every single day, 2.5 billion people out of the 7 in the world reach out and touch one of our products and use it, which I think is an incredible amount of everyday contact with a large proportion of the people that there are on the planet. And we reach them through a staggering 30 million outlets. We'll hear a bit more about the consumer tomorrow from Stan Stananathan, who's our head of Consumer and Market Insight. That's going to be a great session. But ultimately what I'd like you to think about is the broad channel expertise and capability that we already have. I'll pick this up in today's closing session, but really that depth of distribution and that ability to reach consumers through many channels is quite defining. And that ranges, of course, from our strength in the traditional trade in the emerging markets right through to e-commerce, and now more of our business where we reach the consumer directly, direct to consumer, as we say. And finally, I think we are genuinely, without doubt, the most international talent bench that exists in the industry. You're going to see quite a good portion of that over the course of today and tomorrow. We have diversity both in our global teams. Our global teams are diverse. Very, very important that when we make an investment and bring somebody into a global role, we think about the mix and diversity of international representation globally. And of course, we have deep, deep experience within our local markets. 80% of our country leadership teams in our emerging markets are in fact local from the country itself. And as you know, we are the #1 employer of choice in the industry in at least 34 countries, which again is a defining strength. There are 3 big themes of the event that I very much hope that you take away over the course of the next 2 days. The first one is that we are truly all about growth. It is unmistakably the top priority for us in this company. We are seeking to grow always 1% ahead of our markets. We do that through fantastic execution and the fact that our portfolio is strong and we have those strong #1 and #2 positions, which mean we have very high market shares generally, and therefore that allows us, if we execute well, to grow usually 1% ahead of our marketplace. We also are talking now about an extra 1% of growth that comes from evolving our portfolio. And those two 1% ahead of the rate of market growth give us the confidence to reconfirm, as we did in our release before this event, our 3 to 5% underlying sales growth guidance with a step up in volume. The second thing that we hope you take away from the event is that 5S, which our Chief Supply Chain Officer, Mark Engel, will talk about later on this afternoon, and zero-based budgeting together deliver 6 billion euros in savings between 2017 and 2019. That is fuel for both growth on the top line and allows us to operate going forwards at a higher margin. And that combination of growth and margin expansion, of course, creates an awful lot of value. Finally, the third theme we'd like you to take away is that we're positioning for future growth opportunities. We're doing that by changing the portfolio and by working on our channel footprint. And of course, we're building capabilities to sustain that. Now, this is my last chart of the kickoff. It's not a perfect analogy, I know, but that's the Hudson River, which you probably drove past or drove over on the way here. It's just over there. It's what I've been thinking about when I ponder the challenges and opportunities of faster disruption in the sector. I'm thinking of it like crossing over a river. You've got to do it. You've got to get to the other bank. And the water runs a little bit faster in the middle of the stream. Now, we started well over 2 years ago to reposition and think about the business for this faster pace of change. I think we've crossed the faster flowing part of the river. I think some companies are with us, and I think some others are still pondering the journey from the far bank. We hope to show you that over the next couple of days, and we'll let you decide who you think gets across the river. But certainly, as I think about it, it's a river crossing that we're going on, and we're well on our way. So before I hand over to Alan, who's going to take you through personal care, there's one other personnel change, of course, which you know about, and that is that Andrew Stephen will retire at the end of this year. And I'll say a little bit more about that briefly tonight. He had to go, by the way, after 35 years, because if you can't tell the difference between Nitin and Kevin, then it's time to move on. That's what 13 years in IR will do for you. So anyway, I'll say a bit more about how highly we think of Andrew, and I'm sure you all do in the room as well this evening. But I did want to introduce you to Richard Williams. Just stand up for a minute, Richard. This is Richard Williams, who's taking on from Andrew. He's going to shadow him over the course of the day. Please give him a break and don't, you know, he has been working on spreads. Don't ask him every question there is about spreads. But Richard has had a fantastic career, positioning himself very well for this most demanding job. He's worked in the front line of our operations. He's worked in emerging markets. He's worked in developed markets. He's worked in some really key corporate roles. So I just wanted to let you know who Richard was. And as I said, we'll have plenty of time to thank Andrew over the course of the next 2 days. With that, I'm going to hand over to Alan, who's going to take us through personal care.